Thank you and welcome everybody. It's great to have you on the call, and really looking forward to sharing with you some ideas around how to manage this season that we're in. And if you are able to put on your video so that I can see you, that would be good. If you're unable to do that, then that's okay. And so, yeah, it's kind of helpful for me if I can see some faces as I'm interacting and communicating with you. If you're able to put your camera on so that I can see you, that'd be great. I understand for some of you, you may not be able to do that, but yeah, welcome. It is good to be with you today. So keeping your sanity when working from home, I think we are all in a very challenging and interesting time globally, not just in Cambodia or wherever you're from, but certainly here back in Australia, where I am at the moment, coming to you live from Sydney in the later afternoon. And the challenges that we find ourselves in this season, I think, are very unusual, and they're very different, and they're things that we have not had to work through, or challenges that we have not had to face before. And many of us are finding ourselves stuck in either isolation, we're working from home, we're working in different environments, we're not connecting with people in the same way that we normally would do in the old normal world. And so I want to just explore a couple of key elements that will help, I believe, that we keep our sanity. We want to make sure that even in this season that there are challenges and it is quite difficult for us, that we are maintaining a sense of really healthy well-being, that we're staying mentally, positive in this season. And we're going to explore some of that together. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me. My name obviously is Brett. I'm from Sydney. I do travel frequently to Cambodia, particularly Phnom Penh, and do work with the capacity specialists, which is great. And I've been coming to Phnom Penh, Cambodia for about 8 or 9 years. Speak a little bit of Khmer, but not that good. And yeah, so a lot of experience over the last 25 years in leadership and, working with a whole bunch of different organizations as a leadership and business coach. And so it's great that I can be here to share with you, to experience some of this virtual training and work together a little bit in this online space. So I'm going to just want to do a little bit of an experiment just to kind of make sure that your brains are in order. So this little exercise here, I'm hoping you can all see the screen. What I want you to do is I want you to read out loud. You can turn your microphone on if you like. I want you to read out loud the color that you see on the screen, not the word. And so this is a bit of a challenge just to get your brain thinking. And so if you can read across that line, red, blue, orange, purple, orange, blue, green, red, green, pink, purple, blue. So you got to read the color, what the color is, say out loud what the color is, not what the word says. And this is where our brain gets a little bit confused. So I want you to have a go at that to wake up your brain, because I want to make sure that for this next little while that your brain is very alert and ready to go. So I want you to see if you can read that nice and quick. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to read the color, not the word. Read the color: red, blue, orange, purple, orange, blue, green, red, green, pink, purple, blue, blue, pink, green, orange. How are you going with that? Is that challenging? How's your brain feeling? Feel free to make a comment as you go, as in the text chat room, chat box, but just a little exercise just to get your brain thinking and working. I don't know what kind of a day you've had today. I've had a pretty busy day. Maybe you've had a stressful day. Maybe you've had a busy day at home. Maybe you've had some things that you've had to deal with. And so we just want to clear our minds. We want to get our brain working because we want you to get the most out of this as possible. So in this session, we're going to focus on some learning around these 5 keys, if you like, in developing and making sure that in this season of isolation or working from home, and all the challenges that come with that, whether they're technical challenges, relationship challenges. Some of you might have the kids running around because they're not in school at the moment. There's a whole bunch of different challenges around working from home and working in isolation and not being in spaces that generally help us in the way that we work. And so the 5 areas that we're going to have a look at is our emotional intelligence, so the awareness that we have around how we're feeling, how we're doing, our energy levels, the quality of our relationships, our perspective, and our priorities. So we're going to have a look at those 5 things. Now, there's a really important principle that I want to teach you tonight, and that is this. What you focus on in this season will determine what you experience more of. What you focus on, you will experience more of. Now, if you're taking notes, that's something that I would certainly write down, because that little phrase has helped change a lot for me over the years. It's very easy for us when things are not going well, or when there's a crisis at hand, or when we find ourselves in a season of change, is that we focus on the negative. We focus on what we don't have. We focus on the hard things. We focus on the problem. We focus on what's not in our hand. And if we continue to focus on those negative things, then we will continue to experience more of those negative things. And so one of the things that we want to take away from this time is, yes, this is a hard time. There are a lot of challenges for us. Economic challenges, social challenges, relationship challenges, business challenges, and our own well-being challenges. And so in this season, we want to be making sure that what we're focused on is working for us, that we're focusing on and finding the positives and the learnings and the good things, what we do have, so that we can experience more of that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to send you off into a smaller room. Now, I'm not sure if you are familiar with the Zoom technology. It is very clever, and there's lots of different things that we can do. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to send you off into what we call breakout rooms. And you're going to get sent into a room with 3 or 4 other people. And I want you to answer this, have a conversation together about what is the biggest challenge that you are personally facing in this season. And so I'm just going to stop sharing this slide for a minute, which means I'm going to bring you all back. And so I'm going to send you off into rooms, okay? So just give me 1 second. And you'll get asked a question to join a room. When you get into that room, I want you to have a quick conversation around what has been your biggest challenge in this season. And I'm going to give you about 4 to 5 minutes to have a conversation, and then I'll bring you all back to the main room. Welcome back as you begin to come back into the big room. How was your group, Marity?
I just take the question into the chat box and then no one in the group. I don't know why.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I was in a group, but it kind of worked okay.
So maybe I can share from my room. So it be the short time, but we had a good chit chat with Bongatay and also from you. So we have the same problem. It's about the communication because just like we discussed, we have changed everything. So sometimes we got a lot of information at the same time from different channels. So a bit miscommunication. Furthermore, it's about we are still afraid of going out and meet new people because we still afraid with the virus. So it's all what we are discussing into my room.
Yeah. Is there anyone else from the group, from their group conversation, like to share with the rest of us what their group talked about? What is the main challenge that people are facing in this season? Just turn your microphone on, unmute yourself so that you can speak. Is anyone willing to share a couple of ideas from what their group talked about? Anybody? Don't be afraid.
So I can share what our group spoke about. So basically, the challenge we talked about was the lack of personal interaction as compared to what working life was before the current season, and that's both where people having to work from home and they are by themselves, but also people working in the office because there are maybe less people, or they are being forced to physically distance. So there's also less interaction.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. I think, you know, for the conversations that I've had with a variety of different people and even in our own little group then, that a lot of the challenges that we're facing in this season are connected with that lack of personal connection, which is impacting things like our communication. It's impacting the way we communicate, not just in business, but also with the people in our lives. And not being, you know, one of the comments made in our group is that it feels like our whole society's been turned around 180 degrees and we're experiencing a totally different experience in this season. And so I think one of the challenges in that for us is Albert Einstein. He made this comment. He said, you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so in a season like this that we find ourselves in, that is very different to what we've experienced before, we can't continue to do the same thing, because if we continue to do the same thing and expect something different, it won't happen. And so one of the challenges for us in business, in relationships, in leadership, in industry, is that we need to challenge what we have normally done. And obviously, you know, learning technology like this is part of that journey, so that we can develop different and fresh and new strategies around what we need to do or change in a season like this, so that we not only survive, but that we thrive, that we really get the most out of this season. And so, you know, the first thing that I want to talk about is the emotional intelligence piece. And so the emotional intelligence is when we have a sense of self-awareness around our emotion, around our feeling, around our state of mind. And to make sure that when we're in isolation, we can find ourselves thinking and feeling things like feeling isolated, feeling separated, feeling like we're not being appreciated or valued in our journey if we're working in a remote context. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to tap in to our emotional intelligence to create intentional and deliberate awareness around, hey, how am I actually feeling in this season? What is actually going on internally for me? Because this is the challenge, is that generally human beings in life, they respond to the external environment. And so we are constantly being moved and challenged by what is going on around us. And in seasons like this, in a crisis, we have to look more inwardly and find our response to life internally, not externally. So what we do is we allow the circumstances to dictate how we feel. We allow our external relationships to dictate our state of mind. And so when a lot of those things are not there anymore, or when the circumstances around us are difficult, it can make us feel pretty flat. It can make people feel depressed and isolated and alone and loneliness and, confusion because there's a lack of clarity, or we're not being communicated to in the right healthy ways. And so therefore that definitely has impacts on the way that we experience the life that we are in this season. As I said right from the beginning, what you focus on, you will always experience more of. And so if we can create an awareness and just have a look, how am I actually feeling? Am I feeling frustrated? When we feel frustrated, two things happen. One is that our perspective changes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the other thing is that we lose patience. And so I can testify to that when I feel frustrated because of, this season that we find ourselves in, that I become less patient, less tolerant, less able to cope with what's going on around me. And so to create awareness around that so that I can create the change is really important in this journey of being in isolation, working from home, the whole challenge of isolation, etc. And so what we're trying to do is having a look at what's underneath the surface, not so much what's visible, the external. We want to create self-awareness, discovering who we are on the inside, because you cannot change or develop what you're not aware of. And so tapping into what's not seen, your attitudes, your thinking, and your beliefs in a season like this is particularly important, because what is underneath the surface is actually ultimately what is driving your behavior and how you will find you are responding and reacting to the challenges in this season. So if anyone has any questions, as I'm going along, make sure that you write them in the chat room, or you can just kind of unmute yourself and say, excuse me, Brett, I have a question. And so the first key to making sure that we keep sane, that we keep emotionally healthy, that we maintain a good quality around our state of mind, is to be aware of what's going on internally for us. The second thing is around energy. And so in a season where we are in crisis, so we are reacting and responding to a situation that we weren't expecting, things have happened that have created an environment and a sense of chaos and uncertainty and challenge and change that we weren't ready for, then the energy that we bring to that season is another thing that is really important in the way that we will cope. So your capacity to cope with setbacks and challenges is always connected to the amount of energy that you have. And often, again, we find ourselves in a season of isolation, that the very things that created energy for us, so whether that be hanging out with our friends or that social interaction, and we get energy from other people, and we're finding we're not getting that energy anymore. because we're not being able to spend that time with people. And what happens is our emotional tank, if you like, becomes lower and lower and lower, because all we're doing in this season, we feel, is we're giving out. We're doing all this activity and giving and giving and giving, and our capacity, our emotional energy capacity, is becoming lower and lower and lower. So one of the challenges, again, for us in this season, if you look at this little illustration on your screen, is if all we're doing is we're being drained from only giving out of our emotional tank, then our emotional tank is going to get low and we're going to become unhealthy. Now, what happens when our emotional tank gets low? What it means is that if something happens, a crisis or something that is a challenge in the moment, we don't have the emotional capacity to deal with it. And so it can feel like our whole world is crashing around us. And so it's important in a season like this, in any crisis or any challenge, that our self-care, the way that we are managing and looking after our own well-being, is critical to our thriving in this season, to ensure that there are things that we are doing in our life that can fill up our emotional tank so that we do have a capacity to cope with and deal with the challenges that come our way. And those challenges can be anything from that sense of isolation and loneliness. It can also be the challenges of trying to get work done when you've got kids running around the house, or if there's a number of you working from home. My environment, I have my wife working from home, my daughter studying from home, I'm working from home, and my son is studying at home one day a week. So it's like, you know, lots of challenges and distractions. And if my emotional tank is pretty empty and my energy is pretty low, then something triggers me, then I begin to react in ways that are not healthy or helpful to me or to those people around me. And so it's a really good question that we can ask ourselves, and that is, what are the things we need to do differently to feel my emotional tank, to feel my energy levels in a season of isolation or working from home or not being in connection with people like we normally are? And there's a number of things that I would suggest that we could explore, and I'm sure you would have your own ideas if you thought about them. One of the things would be to learn a new skill. My wife has decided in this season of isolation that she's going to learn to draw. And so she's getting some online lessons, and she's bought some paper and some paint, and she's learning a new skill, and that's helping to fill her emotional tank. And so there's a number of different things that we can do. I would say try something you've never done before. Read something that you would never do, something that is kind of outside of what is kind of your comfort space for you. And so what those things do, because they're new and fresh and exciting and challenging, but in a different way, they feed our emotional energy levels and fill our emotional tank. And what that does is it gives us the capacity to be able to deal with and cope with the extra pressures and challenges of a season like this that we find ourselves in. Now, I just want to pause there for a minute. Has anyone got a suggestion or an idea of what might be another way, another thing that you could do that might fill your emotional energy tank in this season? And so if someone's got an idea, I'm just going to give you a few seconds to unmute yourself and share a positive idea with the group. Has anyone got something that they'd like to share? Well, if you've got a good idea, if you've got something that you feel would help you or others, I encourage you to share it, write it in the chat room at the very least, because we can all learn from each other. I am sure there's things that some people in this room are doing that would be really helpful to other people in the way that what are you doing to make sure that you keep your emotional levels high, that your emotional tank stays full? And what are those things and how they might be helpful to other people? So write them in the chat room, go to the chat and share them in there. That would be great, because I'm sure there is a lot of wisdom and experience in this room that might be helpful to other people. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is our relationships. I think one of the challenges is, as we've already said, in a season like this, is our relationships are being challenged, and in two ways. One of the ways our relationships are being challenged is the relationships that we are now finding we can't engage in at the moment. And so some of that, whether that be our work relationships, so our work colleagues, our teams that we normally work with, or could be extended family or friends. And so there's a whole range of relationships that we have that we, at the moment, kind of feels like we are in long distance relationships. You know, I'm not sure if any of you have ever had or known anyone that has had a long distance relationship. And so, you know, they're in a relationship with someone who's living in Australia and they're living in Japan or Cambodia. And so they're trying to manage this relationship in a long distance way. And that creates a lot of problems, because it's hard to get that emotional, that contact, that connect, that deeper connection, that deeper understanding. And often what happens is misunderstanding happens because we're only communicating through message or email. We don't have that personal contact where we're able to have those conversations that can help us in understanding and clarity. So one challenge in this season is the relationships that we miss, the relationships that we feel we need to be effective and productive that we can't have. And so those relationships are under one strain or stress or challenge. And then some of the other relationships we might find is we're all of a sudden now at home all the time. We're at home all the time. If we're married, we're now at home all the time with our partner, with our spouse, with our children. And those relationships are now experiencing a connection and a closeness and a consistency that we're also not used to. And that can create stress on us as well. And so we can find ourselves in this season of isolation, the challenge of the relationships we can't have, and the challenge of the relationships we're forced to have more of. And so it's important that we manage those relationships well, because let's be honest, doing relationship via Zoom or online or text is not the same as doing relationship in person. And so we need to be more expressive. We need to be more real. We need to be more connected. We need to prioritize intentionally those relationships that are critical to us and our well-being. The next thing is around perspective. Now, I believe that the perspective that we bring and have in life makes a massive difference in the way that we see the world and in the way that we see ourselves in the world. So the perspectives that we hold, particularly around struggles, things not going our way, our setbacks, our hurts, our sufferings, our challenges, are so critical in creating our future outcome and results. Now, human nature, usually our perspectives in times of hardship or crisis, our perspectives become negative. Our perspective becomes very self-protecting. And so we get this very narrow perspective about what is going on in our lives and in the world around us. And learn, again, as I said right at the beginning, what we focus on in this season, we will experience more of. Perspective is a big part of how we think and how we act and how we behave, and the outcomes that we will get in life often connect to the perspectives we carry around our own life. We are all, as a global community in this together. That's something that probably hasn't happened for a very, very long time. We are all experiencing the hurt, the challenge, the suffering, the hardships, the setbacks in different ways, in different levels, in different countries, but around the whole world. This is a unique experience that we are walking through together as a global community. And our perspective in that is absolutely critical. As I said before, when we find ourselves feeling frustrated, two things change: our perspective and our patience. And so trying to lead or trying to love or trying to engage or trying to communicate from a place of frustration, we lose perspective and we lose patience. And those two things make a massive difference on our outcomes and on our relationships. There's a little equation that I use in my own life, but it's something that I teach often in many different environments. And it comes out of the idea that nothing has meaning except the meaning that you give it. Now, this is in the context of perspective, because meaning, if you like, is connected to the perspective that we are giving the experiences that we go in. And I'll just give you a little bit of an explanation around this equation that I believe is a really powerful tool that we can use in our lives. Now, a little bit about meaning and perspective, if you like, and that is that you have complete control over the meaning that you give every experience of your life. Every event, every experience that you walk through, every experience that comes your way, good and bad, you have the control over the meaning that that experience has to you. And our meaning is so powerful in creating our outcomes. And these are I guess, the definitions of those things. So the E is the event or the experience. The M is the meaning that we give that event or experience, I guess, our perspective on that. The R is then the response that we make to that. We always respond to our meaning. It's interesting, isn't it? We don't respond to the event or the experience. We respond to the meaning that we give the event or the experience. A really challenging, and for me was such an eye-opener in my own personal journey. And then our response always leads to the outcome that we will get in life. And so at the moment, we are experiencing challenging times. We are experiencing isolation. We are experiencing financial hardship. There might be many different things that we are experiencing, or you could say an event we are experiencing. My question is, what is the meaning that you are giving to your experience? What is the meaning that you are giving to your challenge? Because if we have complete control over the meaning that we give every experience, then I want to give meaning to this experience that's going to help me be successful, that's going to help me be significant, that's going to help me thrive in this journey. So the meaning I give this setback, or the meaning I give this problem, or the meaning I give this rejection, or this experience, or this moment that I'm walking through, I respond to that meaning and it will give me my outcomes in life, in business, and in relationships. And so we have, again, ask ourselves, what's the meaning I'm personally giving this experience? Am I giving it meaning that's negative, that's critical, that's about me? Or am I looking for a deeper meaning that can help me create a response and an outcome that's going to serve me and help me progress and do the best that I can in this season? So if you have any questions about that, one of the things I can do, I can send another worksheet, which would be great. I'll send it to the team there at the Capacity Specialists, and they can email you that, a little worksheet that can help you work through this and understand it in a way with some really good questions around the meaning that we give the experiences and the events that we walk through. You know, the interesting thing is we are very good often at helping our friends or family or work colleagues create and discover good meaning to negative experiences, but we're not very good at doing it for ourselves. And so being challenged to do that, I think, is really important, because we all give different meaning to different things, and it's all connected to the perspective that we have on life and on those challenges. Again, if you have any questions, I encourage you to type them in the chat, or I can give you just a couple of seconds now. If you've got a question, just unmute yourself and be quite prepared to ask me anything about any of this stuff. All right. Oops, my slide went one too far. Okay, so the last thing that I want to have a look at in this little workshop is the need for priorities. You know, doing nothing will change nothing. We must take action. And I said this at the beginning using that quote. You know, if we continue just to do the same things that we've always done and we expect it to look different, it won't look different. It will stay the same. And we can't keep doing what we've always done in a season like this. We have to do things differently. And so we have to work out, what are the things that I need to do differently? What are the priorities I need to focus on? And maybe for you, looking back over some of the things that I've shared today, one of them, your priorities might be around your relationships. How do I invest in and improve the quality of my relationships? A priority for you might be around your perspective. You know, what is it? What meaning am I giving this experience a real negative meaning that's actually making me feel very detached and isolated and even depressed? Like what needs to be your priorities? You know, one of the challenges that I've found with people working remotely or in isolation is that on one hand, we have all this, what we consider extra time. We're not traveling to work anymore. And so in theory, we should have all this extra time to do more stuff and therefore be more productive. But what I'm finding with people is when they're working in isolation, because they don't have their team around them, because they don't have like their boss or their supervisor or their staff, they're finding it harder to motivate themselves, or they're being distracted by family and kids or bad Wi-Fi or etc. And so they're finding that they're not being as productive as they should be and believe they should be. And then they just become very, very hard on themselves. They feel bad. They feel unmotivated and disconnected because on one hand, they feel they should be more productive, but on the other hand, they're not being as productive. And there's this clash of what's going on. And so maybe one of your priorities is around, how do you manage your time in this season? You know, how do you manage your space? How do you need to set up your space? Or maybe for you, a priority will be around your own well-being, you know, your emotional tank, your emotional energy. You know, what are you doing to feel your emotional tank? So what I want to do again is I'm going to send you off for 5 minutes in a room and then bring you back to wrap up this together. I want you to have a conversation around this question. What is one thing you need to prioritize today? What is one thing that you need to prioritize today? And so this question I want you to talk about, a breakout room is kind of like if you were doing a workshop and you were sitting at tables and I said, okay, at your table, I want you to have a conversation about what's one thing you need to prioritize. It's the same. I'm saying to you now, at your table or your breakout room, I want you to talk about this together. I want you to talk about what do you need to prioritize, because we can have this great conversation, but if there's not something that you're prepared to action in this space, I want you to leave this workshop, this webinar, I want you to leave with one action priority that you are going to go and take in to this season and action and do and commit to, because it will create the change. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go into your little breakout rooms again, and I will send you off to, where will I, there. I think Sathiri, are you still there? Not sure whether you're still there. I know you're still with me. I did send you to a breakout room. I will try and move you to a different room. See if that works for you. I think you're either, if you're there, send me a wave. If you're having trouble connecting, let me know. How did you go that time, Marity?
Good.
That's good.
Yes, because our team I see discuss a lot about the prioritized tasks.
Yep. Excellent. We'll just wait for everybody else to come back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. What I'd like to do just for a minute or two is I'd like each of the three groups, if someone from each of the three groups could just share some of what you talked about, just very briefly. So I know, Marity, you were in a group. Maybe if you want to share, what did your group talk about? Just unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, from my group, I just listened from Bongwatay. She shared that now the priority that she focused on is emotional intelligence.
Yeah, good.
Yes, and she think that it's very important for her to improve more and like focus on the especially emotional how to work well in this season. This is just what she said with Bong Chitra, and for Bong Suchitra, he shared that the priority that he focused on is perspective that you said in the session, because like sometimes we cannot focus on the task that what we are doing now. So perspective is very important for us to like never forget what our perspective to do something or get success for what we are doing. So yes, that's it. What the share in the
Yeah,
group.
excellent. Thank you so much. Well done. That's great. I can give you a little clap on my screen right there. So well done. Now, Gabrielle, you were in a group. I don't know if you or someone in your group would like to share.
I'm happy if somebody wants to share. If not, I can share. Not so many ideas in our group. One idea was about keeping focused on the positive and looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
Rather than focusing on the negative, which as your E plus MC
MR.
MR, sorry, formula showed that
Yeah.
it's how you look at a situation will drive what you get out of it and how you feel. So.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And the last group, not 100% sure who was in that. Visith, anyone from that group, if I unmute you, do you want to just share anything? Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm struggling to hear. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we're gonna kind of wrap it up. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about any of that? One of the things that I will do is I will email the team just the worksheet and information around the E plus MR equals O. And so for all the participants that have been here, to give you an opportunity to have a read through that. And also there's some critical questions around meaning and response that might be really helpful in this season. And I might also email a little paper that is around focus. You know, I talked about at the beginning, you know, what you focus on in this season, you will experience more of. And I have a little worksheet that we can send out around focus as well. So I'll make sure when we finish that I email those two things to the team, and then they'll make sure that they get out to you as soon as possible, which would be great. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand back to Maridi from the Capacity Specialist. And thank you so much for being here. And we want you to obviously just stay on the line so that we can get you to fill in a survey. So yeah, again, thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.